Okay, this is Cad Methods Lab 1.1, Part 2, Project 5-1. It's a calculator, and it's on page 212 in your book. And start a new drawing with the AutoCAD template. Now, I'm going to do this a little different. Let's see. I'm going to approach this from the inside out or from the outside in. I guess it doesn't matter. I'll go from the outside in. I'm going to turn off my grid, F7. I think I'll turn my ortho on because it looks like everything is fairly square and even. And except for these triangles, I'll worry about those last. And then I will turn my snap off. So 7 turns off the grid, 8 is ortho on and off, and snap is F9. Let me leave that off. So my maximum dimensions here in the book, 3.5, 6. So I'm going to start off like that. I'm going to start off with a different command. One not presented in the previous exercises. There's this command right here called the rectangle. Now the rectangle will allow me to draw a rectangle. So I'm going to click anywhere on the screen and I'm going to drag up. And I'm going to tell it I want to go at. I'm going to put a relative coordinate in here since I'm saying at. I'm going to tell it I need to go 3.5 in the x, comma, and I'm going to tell it I want to go 6 in the y. And that's going to be my calculator right there. So, there it is. Now, it shows me, let's see here, that this inside lens where the display would be on the calculator, it shows me that that's going to be 3 inches by 2.75 inches. So there's my 3 inches by 2.75 inches. It also shows me that from the outside it's going to be 0.25. So I have to take an extra step here. I'm going to look for a measurement that goes with this double line right here, and I don't see one. So I'm going to use my offset command, and I'm going to say it's 0.0625 and see what that looks like. That looks pretty good. So now I have the double line that goes around the edge. So that's good. Now what I need to do is start establishing this inside stuff. So I'm going to use a different command that we haven't used yet called explode, because I want to offset some of these lines, and I'm just going to explode and pick them, because if you look at them right now, they're all, it's one line that's called a polyline that goes all the way around there, and because I offset it, it's a polyline too. So I'm going to say explode, pick these, and now I have individual lines. So I'm going to offset. Let's do the X line thing. X line. And I'm going to say offset. And I'm going to say 0.25. Enter. I'm going to pick the outside. Pick the inside. And that'll give me my my offset for my 0.25 that it specifies right here. Okay, so now it says it's 3 inches over there. Now the X line's good because it shows me that it's a construction line and it goes all the way across the screen. So that's a good clue that I'm going to have to do something with that later. So I'm going to say X. Click on this, X line again, and I'm going to say 3 based on that number right there. So here, whoop, I messed up. I didn't put the 3 in. So X line, offset 3 from here to there. Okay, so now I need the top of the display right here, and it tells me right here that it's 0.25. So I'm going to take this line up here. I'm just going to offset it. Let's do that X line because I like that. It gives me a clear construction line. So X line, offset, and 0.25. And we'll pick that top line, and we'll pick down here, and there's the top of my display. Now right here, it tells me that it's 0.275. That's the height of the display. So let's do the X line again, offset. Oh, I clicked on accident. X line, then offset 2.75. And we'll pick that line and drag it down here. Now I have a display in there. So a little different than we did before. I'm going to do trim, enter. I'm going to pick all those construction lines that I created with the X line. Because what that does, the first question is to select a boundary. So I want to select all of them as a boundary, hit enter, and now it'll trim up into the line that you had selected the first time. And I have the display. I'm going to have to do that again. So I'm going to do an offset of 0.0625, just like I did the outside frame, except I'm going to pick each line. And then if you look, each one's got a little corner in there. I'm just zoom in around there. So you zoom, and you can draw a window around it or zoom up to it, and then trim, enter, enter, and delete those corners. You have to do that on all 4 corners. Don't forget this one. And then over here. Now I have the border and the display. Now we have to figure out the buttons. Now, here, it shows me that the distance from the bottom up is 0.25. And then over here, it shows me what the size of the button is. And that they line up along this edge. So, because I know they line up on the edge, I'm going to say line the end point and just drag it all the way down. Pan this up a little bit, just so we can see this a little better. I'll drag that all the way down. Line from here, and drag it all the way down. That's going to give me this edge of the buttons right here. Right here. And then 0.25 from the bottom. So I'm going to offset 0.25 and from here up. There I have the bottom of the button. So if I were to trim, select these as my cutting edge, I would have a clean set of buttons. Okay, so now it tells me in my directions right here, the borders around the perimeter area are 1/16 inch, so that was my 0.625, and the distance between the buttons is 1/8, 0.125. Okay, right here, height of my button, 0.25. So I'm going to offset 0.25. Do that again. Click, and I've got my first row of buttons. And the width offset 0.5. The offset from here to there, and from here to there. Now, this is going to get a little cluttered really quick, but that's okay. I'm going to say offset 0.125. That's the distance between the buttons. And then offset 0.5 again for the buttons. Now, offset, because it's 0.125 here, that should give me the one middle button. So offset 0.125. And then I should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons. So here's my 5 buttons. Okay. This is where it becomes a little messy. So I'm going to offset 0.125 up, and then this 0.25 for the height of the button. Offset 0.25. And then I'm just going to alternate offsetting the 0.125 and the 0.25 until offset 0.125. I get to the top. And you can see, oops, see there I made a mistake. So delete that, offset 0.25. And then offset 0.25. Now there are other ways to do this. You could copy the buttons, you could array the buttons, but the book probably wants us to do it like this. So we're going to hang out using this command. And I think there's probably one more row right at the top. There we go. 0.25. Okay. So now we have all these extra lines in there. Now the easiest way to deal with those is to zoom in. Try to keep track of what's going on. Trim, enter, and use a crossing fence. And be real careful, because if you click down here, you're going to trim more that you don't want. That you just do it across. I think this is probably the fastest way. You could click individually, but it might take a long time. But whatever you're more comfortable with. Trim, trim. Just make sure you're only crossing and touching the things you want. Like, see here, this would get rid of too much, so I'm going to be careful right through here. And 2 more selections, and I'm done with the buttons. So, now let's do these arrows. This ought to be pretty easy. So I'm going to draw a line from the intersection, shift right click to the midpoint, down to that intersection. You might have your endpoint turned on. It doesn't matter which one you use. Do that again down here. Line, shift right click to the midpoint. Whoop. See there, I grabbed the wrong point. So line from that intersection to, oh, maybe I had the right point, into that intersection. And then I'll do the same with these on the sides. Shift right click for the midpoint. Click, click. And I'll just select the things I want to go away and hit delete. Now we're not given any specifications on this oval, so I'm going to say ellipse. You could say it, you could type it or hit the button. Remember, when you do the ellipse, you have to go across first. So from the midpoint to the midpoint, and then, oh, I used the wrong ellipse. So from type the ellipse from the midpoint to the midpoint. I'm using a 3-point ellipse, so I'm picking at 3 different points. And then zoom in if you need to, and delete these lines. Now that looks like a circle right there to me, and they don't really tell us what it's supposed to be, so I'm just going to use the circle command and shift right click and say center, pick it, and just kind of eyeball one in there. I'm not sure how big it is. And then that, zoom, looks like a pretty good calculator to me. So file, save, and we're going to call this lab 1.1, part 2, and this is going to be project 5-1. Save it, put your initials on the end, and that's it.